Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is J.R. Moore coming to you live from deep in the mountains of the Missouri Ozarks on Friday, the 17th day of November, year of our Lord 2017. Welcome to the John Moore Show. Prepper tip of the day. I want to encourage all of you to get your winter car kits together. Winter car kits. It's going to vary depending on where you live. If you live in an area where they have gates on the interstate highway, if you've never been north, you don't know what I'm talking about. Once you get far enough north, they have gates on the interstate highway to keep you from getting on the interstate and to force you to get off because of violent snow, ice conditions. That's where you know you're in some serious winter areas. So get your car kit together. You can figure this out. Make sure you've got what you need. A way to keep warm, a little extra food, a way to charge up your cell phone, for example, if the car is dead. A way to signal people that you're stuck in the snow, some kind of bright orange fabric that you can get up high above the car, because the car will get covered up with snow. So there's more to it. That's just a quick overview. We have a patient waiting in green room, my friend Tom Berryhill. Tom is a gentleman who began his lifelong quest to become very experienced in radio frequency engineering and radio communications, especially ham radio communications, just more than half a century ago. And we're going to focus, at least starting out, on power supplies for these radios. Good morning, Tom.
Morning, John. How are you today?
Well, wonderful. I had a great night's sleep. Of course, I sleep on Energy Cleaner every night, and woke up bright-eyed and bushy-tailed and ready to go at them. Well, Tom, the things that you and I take for granted, it's just part of who we are. For probably most Americans, they have a very cursory knowledge of power for these radios, batteries, the different types of batteries, and so forth. So we're going to educate them this morning on that, aren't we, sir?
We sure are. We'll do the best we can.
Okay. Well, the majority of these radios run on 12 volts DC, don't they, sir?
Well, they do, John, and technically the specifications usually call out 13.8 volts, which would be the approximate charging voltage in an automotive system.
Right. Well, we common terminology is 12 volts. Now, there's different ways to achieve that goal, and we're going to talk about those different ways. First of all, since there's such a huge interest in what's called handy talkies, and many people who aren't in the radio world call walkie-talkies, which came out of the World War II Korea era, by the way. Handy talkies typically have a battery that's part of the unit. Most of the time for the better radios, it's a easily removable battery, isn't it?
That's correct, John. And some of the newer radio equipment, the portable radios, are using similar circuitry that's in the cell phones, which will operate in some cases under 4 volts, typically 3.3 to 3.7 volts. So the electronics has gotten better over the years, and it's been engineered to operate at much lower voltages. And that's where some of the HTs, the ham radio, and commercial two-way radio handheld products are headed. So they may use 12 volts or even higher voltage for charging to charge those batteries, but it's always dropped down to a lower voltage inside that circuitry to charge that lower voltage battery. I know some of the equipment's heading that direction.
Now, what I'm about to say applies to a family or a group of people who want to have handy talkies for themselves, for their group, their family, or their group. Say it could be a church security group. It applies to those types of people that want to have handy talkies for 2 or 4 or 10 or 20 people. And here it is. You need to make a decision before anybody buys one radio of a radio that will be good for everybody, for the following reason: compatibility of batteries, accessories such as speaker mics, holsters, and so forth, and antennas. It makes your logistics tremendously more simple if the group chooses one style radio where they have one style charger that fits all the radios, one style battery that fits all the radios, holsters that fit all the radios, and of course battery interchangeability. Otherwise, you're going to end up with a logistical nightmare, aren't you, Tom?
Well, very true, John. And the type of, I'm not a huge fan of HTs. They have their place for local short-range communications. I don't use them for any long-range applications at all, period. But they're great for around the farm, close to home, from car to car if you're following somebody and giving directions and so on. But I think the absolute most important thing to do is make sure the chargers you have can also operate on 12 volts and have a cable or cord set up to where you can plug it into the accessory outlet in a car and power that charger and allow it to be charged while you're on the road. I think that's a very important thing to take into consideration. In the event the utility power's out, you don't have a 120-volt outlet to plug in your AC-powered battery charger, you can always use the car.
Well, I suggest getting both, quite frankly. The 12-volt car charger simply plugs into the cigarette lighter. But in the back of my Lincoln Town Car, I have an inverter, and I can plug in a regular 110 AC battery charger in there, or a refrigerator, or a power saw, or a television set, or a computer.
Right.
Whatever.
That's very handy.
It is handy.
That's very handy.
It's very handy, and it's there 24/7 for use as needed. But I like backups on the backups. The 12-volt accessory power that you plug into the cigarette lighter is very inexpensive and very handy, and typically can fit, and you can put it in a Ziploc bag and keep it in a glove box. They're very compact, don't take up much space, and it's right there when you need it, isn't it, Tom?
Yes, it is. And considering backups, John, you may only need 2 or 3 HTs, or say maybe 5 for your group. If you need 5, I'd say get at least 10 to 12. And I only use usually 2 or 3 myself for a group. And for that particular Motorola radio, I've got about close to 20 of them. So
right.
You never know when you need to pass out a few more.
Yeah, well, extra radios is part of it, but extra batteries is just as big a part of it. Whenever I go out into the field on operation, I always have one fully charged battery attached to the radio, and at least 1 second, possibly 2, depending on the operation, fully charged batteries for backup for that radio. And so I would get at least minimum 2 batteries for each radio, and if you can afford them, 3 batteries for each radio. Right, Tom?
That's absolutely correct, John. Carrying a spare battery is like carrying a spare magazine for your pistol. It's
absolutely
the same thing.
It is exactly the same thing. And the same thing with flashlights. Since we're talking about, I have my tactical vest that I use when I respond here locally. It has a very powerful handheld flashlight and a special tactical battery carrier with 6 extra fresh batteries in it, ready to go for instant use.
Yeah, that's perfect. I've noticed that you always do carry a flashlight with you, John. That's a pretty wise thing to do.
That's just the one. That's just the one you can see.
Yeah, right. And I really enjoyed the demonstration. That new flashlight you got. I don't know if you're able to talk about that yet, but I found that very entertaining.
I'm not selling them, but as with most things involving electronics, they get smaller, more powerful, and less expensive. So I sold one of my neighbors my stun gun that I had carried for probably 10 or 15 years. He needed it to take care of some stray dogs, and I went ahead and upgraded and bought a new one for myself. And I demonstrated to you on the parking lot after dark outside the restaurant, and it's pretty spectacular, isn't it?
Well, it was like a miniature lightning show. It was very interesting,
yeah.
And that could be a very important thing to have on you, if the situation got desperate.
Right. It's a combination, very powerful flashlight with the current state-of-the-art technology and a very powerful stun gun technology also. But none of these devices are anything more than a paperwork unless they've got a properly charged battery, are they?
That's correct. That's right.
Now, let's talk a little bit about the batteries themselves. Now, back in the 70s, we were just pleased as could be that there was such a thing that came about as it was called a rechargeable battery. Because before that, now I'm talking about, I guess 1974, 1975, along in there, thereabouts, give or take a year or two. They came out with what they called rechargeable batteries, and they were NiCads, nickel cadmium. And we found out pretty quickly the deficiencies of those batteries on one hand. On the other, that's all we had. We had no choice, did we, Tom?
That's all that was really available up until recent times. The battery technology, of course, has gotten really good, especially in recent years. Some so good that one minor malfunction inside that battery, the whole thing melts down and sets things on fire. So
right.
Those are rather dangerous. Right.
That's the lithium-ion batteries, which have internal electronics. But the nickel metal hydride is now the preferred rechargeable battery. And there's different versions. What people want to get is the low self-discharge, LSD, low self-discharge nickel metal hydride batteries. And if you can avoid getting the NiCads, you want to avoid them because they have issues. First of all, they develop a memory which shortens the useful charge that it has, that it retains. And then they also have internal issues that also degrade the value and integrity of the battery, don't they, Tom?
That's true, and the nickel metal hydride is what I use on my portable radios. Back in the 70s, we were using the Motorola HTs that had the nickel NiCad, and John, they would develop internal whiskers. The metallic elements in there would grow and cause what they called whiskers, metal whiskers, that would short out the cell internally. And there were all types of tricks that everybody used to blow the things out. We'd put high voltage for just a few seconds to the battery, and that would typically blow those whiskers out almost like a fuse. It was just like blowing a fuse, and then the battery could be charged again. But it was a nightmare messing with NiCads, and I wouldn't recommend anybody even think about using them today. I'm sure they're better than they used to be 30 and 40 years ago, but those nickel metal hydride are the absolute best all around. Minimum problems, low cost relative to others, and the weight to power ratio is not too bad. I mean, there are some advantages of having very lightweight batteries that can source a tremendous amount of power. There's also a lot of danger there until those details get worked out.
Right. Now, I was at my local power sports dealer, Kawasaki dealer, getting my oil change on my motorcycle yesterday, and I was looking at electric-powered utility vehicles, what my neighbors call side-by-sides, four-wheel drive utility vehicles, and they now come in an electric version. And it turns out the manufacturer Polaris is going mostly to the lithium-ion batteries for their high-end side-by-sides, but they still offer the lead-acid batteries as entry level, which is right at $12,000, by the way, for the least expensive one. And I was telling the salesman, I said, there's no way I'm going to get one of these carts, one of these vehicles with a lithium-ion battery, because they have internal electronics that are known to become defective and cause fires or even explode. So I was strictly focused on the lead-acid versions of those little buggies, those side-by-sides, as we call them here locally, to power it and be safe. So people need to be, you could spend $18,000 to $20,000 on one of these side-by-sides, Tom, as much as an inexpensive automobile. And
transformer-looking thing, and it charges up your cell phone. Most of those are what's called a switching power supply. And if it does have a transformer, it's more like a little coil in there, and it operates at a very high frequency, usually maybe from 20 to 40 kilohertz, And if you're going to power any kind of HF-type radio equipment, I don't like switching power supplies. I like what's called a linear power supply, which is basically a transformer and then some diodes and capacitors and maybe sometimes some coils to smooth out the rectified AC power, and then there's some regulator circuitry in there to maintain that exact voltage.
Tom,
I prefer that type of power supply.
We're losing people here. They didn't know what to do. They don't need to know what goes on inside the box.
Oh, okay. Well, you tell me, John, and I'll tone it down.
Okay.
But basically, you have two types of power supplies: just the old-fashioned linear power supply, and then you have the newer switch mode. I don't like the switch mode power supplies at all.
Okay. Well, let's get back to that after the break. We got a break. Call number is 800-313-9443. J.R. Moore here. As most of you know, my regular listeners, I offer energy cleaners for sale at my website. If you don't have a clue what I'm talking about, go to my website, thelibertyman.com, educate yourself about these marvelous healing devices. We focus on pain mitigation and getting a great night's sleep. Arthritis pain, joint pain, back pain, doesn't matter. Keep in mind, I offer from me to you personally a 30-day money-back guarantee. That's what I do. Energy cleaners, $285, shipping included to American zip codes. You can educate yourself all about the energy cleaner right there at my website, the patent application, the wonderful testimonials. Be sure and check out the factory-made fitted mattress pads to go with the energy cleaner. Now, I offer from me to you personally a 30-day money-back guarantee. That's what I do. I have a toll-free order line, or you can order it right at my website at thelibertyman.com. That toll-free order line is 800-592-9543. I say again, 800-592-9543. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, J.R. Moore here. It's taken 3 years before I could offer the inter-shelter domes for sale. During those 3 years, several different governments and militaries were taking all their production. The inter-shelter dome homes may be just what you've been looking for to provide affordable, energy-efficient, permanent, and attractive housing. These dome homes are prefabricated units that can be assembled in a few hours by two men with a ladder and simple hand tools. Check out the photos of these dome homes built in the Arctic, on tropical beaches, in suburban areas, and in forests. All the details, many photographs, and the pricing of the dome homes are listed on the left-hand side of my homepage at thelibertyman.com. I think you'll find these homes are not only attractive, but they're energy efficient, and a bonus. You can disassemble them and reassemble them as many times as you feel you need to. Pretty great, huh? Something that's very, very unique. Check them out at my website at thelibertyman. J.R. Moore here on Friday the 17th of November. I just got a note from my engineer. We're having some issues with getting the signal out here for our radio show today with the streaming servers. And it looks like there may not be that many people listening live right now, but the show is being recorded and will be in the archives for people to listen to at a later time. And I apologize for that, ladies and gentlemen, but it is the way it is, and we're dealing with electronics here, aren't we, Tom?
Well, we are, and when you're dealing with electronics, almost anything can go wrong, and it happens almost instantaneously at times.
Absolutely. Okay, well, let's get back to these power supplies for these base stations. Let's explain in layman's terms what people want to get the best quality signal and what they don't want. So, in real simple terms, Tom.
Okay, and then John, I'll describe how I power some HF equipment here, which has worked out very good for me at a very low cost. Okay, first of all, you have the old style called linear power supply, and they'll actually be marketed that way. It'll say linear power supply. That's the old style with a big transformer. They're very heavy duty, plugs in the wall, takes 120-volt AC power from the wall and converts it into the 12 volts needed to power that, and 12 volts DC, by the way, that's needed to power that radio equipment. They're normally very reliable. That's what I use. I use a form of that, and in a minute I'll give you the exact model numbers and how you can find them. All right, then number two, we have the switch mode power supplies, or they'll be called switching power supplies. And what these do is take the AC power from the wall outlet and they chop it. They electronically cut it up, slice it up, and then take little slices of that and turn it into the DC power. These are very, very efficient power supplies. They work great. They're fantastic. And by the way, John, that's what you buy these new LED light bulbs, the LED fluorescent bulbs. All of the new style light bulbs use these switching power supplies because they're inherently very efficient. Now, the downside to switching power supplies, and some of them, if you get
let me help you out here, Tom. The way to identify these is you got a cord that plugs in the wall, then a black plastic box as part of the cord going to the device, and then the cord leaves that black box and goes into the radio.
Well, yes, but either type of power supply on the smaller units, that large plug can either be a transformer or a switching power supply. It should be marked right on there. Sometimes they are, sometimes they aren't. But the little chargers for cell phones, and I would say the chargers for a lot of these HTs are most likely switching power supplies. I wouldn't worry about those too much. If you're going to have a shortwave radio or an HF ham setup, personally, I don't care for the switching power supplies at all. And the reason for that is that circuitry inside that chops and cuts up that power and slices and dices and so on makes a lot of noise. And that noise will be radiated as interfering signals. Not real powerful. Sometimes they are loud, but usually they're in the background. But it can cause so much noise to your radio that you can't pick up the signals you're trying to hear. So for that reason alone, I don't like to use the switching power supplies on HF equipment or shortwave type of equipment. Otherwise, you can almost pick either type. And in most cases, if you purchase something new to power up your 2-meter or 450 megahertz ham station, VHF FM type ham station, in almost every case are going to be switching power supplies if you get it from the factory or if you buy an aftermarket type unit.
Okay, hold that thought right there, Tom. We got our bottom of the hour break. We'll be back after the break. Stay tuned.
You are tuned in to the Republic Broadcasting Network. Visit our website by going to republicbroadcasting.org.
Ladies and gentlemen, J.R. Moore here. We're continuing our energy cleaner promotion, which began August of 2016. In this promotion, you get to buy an energy cleaner, $70 off retail, and a mattress pad, 10% off retail. $200 of the purchase price of the energy cleaner goes to Republic Broadcasting. This is a great way to help get energy cleaners out to people who need them and have some financial issues to deal with. And, of course, a great way to support Republic Broadcasting. Here's what you do. Send in a postcard. My address is John Moore, P.O. Box 201, Davidsville, Missouri. We pick a postcard every 2 weeks. if your postcard is drawn, you get the chance to buy the energy cleaner, $70 off retail, and 10% off the mattress pads. Put your name and your address, your telephone number, and your email address on the postcard, and we wish you the best of luck. Thank you. All right, we are back, ladies and gentlemen. We're back here or more here on Friday, the 17th day of November. My website is thelibertyman.com. That's thelibertyman.com. Lots of fascinating things on my website, free downloads. If you want to know about EMP, well, go to the experts. And I've got the report from the experts right there at my website. It's a free download. Just scroll down the right side, and you'll see right just above the RBN logo, or the Rural Survival logo. It's a scrolling logo. I'm sorry. EMP Commission Executive Report 2008. This is the real deal from the scientists, the engineers who make their living dealing with these kind of matters. So it's a free download. It's about 300 pages or so. The first 90, first 100 pages are the most important in terms of understanding what this matter is and how to mitigate. It's real important. So get your hands on that and print it out and read it and study it. Of course, also my website are energy cleaners. I'm working with Tom. We had a postcard drawing a week ago yesterday. Gentleman from Australia, his card was drawn. We have to calculate the postage, and he wants a couple of extra little accessories to get this ready to ship to him. And the energy cleaner, I use mine every night. The energy cleaner is a healing device, electronic healing device. That's what it is. If you're taking some kind of medication for arthritis pain, if you're taking some kind of medication for joint pain or back pain, you obviously need an energy cleaner. If you're taking some kind of medication to sleep at night, you need an energy cleaner. Long term, these medications, just read the package insert. You want to know what the long-term effects are? Well, just keep taking them, and you'll find out. Or you can read the package insert. Very harmful, as well as being expensive. Energy cleaner is only $285, shipping included. Keep in mind, I offer a 30-day money-back guarantee, so you're risking nothing when you get your energy cleaner. I just picked up a fresh batch last night. I got mattress pads en route from the manufacturer. When you place your order, I'm the guy that boxes them up and ships them out, priority mail, through the Postal Service. How about that? I do take PayPal, the most secure way to make any payment online, MasterCard, Visa. Checks can be sent to my address at thelibertyman.com. I have a toll-free order line. Don't try to call me. You won't get me. This is an order line only. 800-592-9543. I say again, 800-592-9543. Visiting with Tom Berryhill, we're talking about power supplies for communications equipment so that we can eliminate some of the mystery and help people achieve their goal. Right, Tom?
That's right, John. And I don't remember where we left off, switching power supplies versus linear.
Right.
What I use on HF equipment, because you want something that generates very low noise, I use a linear power supply, and it's also interconnected with some deep cycle lead-acid batteries. And this gives me the best of both worlds. I can run the equipment from the wall outlet, and if the power goes out, it's almost like an uninterruptible power supply, almost like the same thing you would use for your computer system. It just keeps running off of the batteries, and you can connect up as many batteries as you would like. The exact power supply I use is from a General Electric Master 2 two-way radio base station. And if anybody can latch on to one of those, that is really one of the best power supplies I think that was ever made. It's got a termination in there that allows you to connect the batteries right in. So that power supply will not only run all the equipment, it will also charge those batteries. And in the event of a power outage, it will seamlessly transfer the battery power right into your circuit, and your radios, they never even make a blip. They just keep running. And when the power comes back on, or if you can feed it again with a generator system or your backup system, it will start recharging the batteries, and then your radio equipment will be transferred back to the AC power that's being supplied to it. So it's a really, really good setup.
And who's the manufacturer of this again?
Well, it was General Electric. John, they don't make them anymore. It was called a Master 2. You can find them on eBay. I don't really know what they go for. I actually bought the entire radio system that came out of the St. Louis airport. When they went to narrowbanding, they had to dump all of the equipment. And by January of 2013, all of the two-way radio systems had to be operated in a narrowband system to comply with the new FCC regulations. So that put tons and tons and tons of radio equipment on the market that was headed for the scrap bin. Nobody wanted it. You could export it. You could set these things up and sell the repeater systems, the base stations to a lot of them went to Africa and South America. I think they're still using the older type of equipment there. This equipment is perfectly usable. There was nothing wrong with it. And in my view, John, that General Electric Master 2 radio system was one of the finest ever made.
And that's what it's called, the Master 2 radio system?
Yeah, but the way they spell it is MASTR. There's no E in there at the end.
Okay.
And they abbreviate it, and it's called Master 2, Roman numeral 2.
Okay.
I bought a pickup truck. I mean, the pickup truck was literally full of the base stations. I didn't want the mobile units and all. I just wanted the base stations. And it filled up a pickup truck, and the guy wanted $25 for all of it. He saved it from going to the dumpster. The guy had an online ad, and he said he listed all his equipment. He said $25 for all of it. So I drove about 125 miles with the pickup truck to go get it. I knew what it was, and I knew it was valuable to have. These base stations, they operate. They're UHF, and that was what the police, fire, everything, all the utilities and law enforcement at the St. Louis airport was using this equipment. I took the power supply out of one of them, and that's what I use to power my HF station now, along with 4 deep cycle batteries that are connected in parallel. So those batteries, those 12-volt batteries, are charged off of that power supply, but also will run the equipment in the event of an outage. And it's just instantly switched over to the batteries, so you don't miss a beat. Works great.
Well, it's time to mention something else here, and that's how to properly maintain lead-acid batteries. And I don't sell these devices. I think some are listed under John's Survival and Tactical Gear, so I guess in a manner of speaking, I do sell them, assuming listings are still current, because I found out many of these Amazon listings have changed. But the company is called Pulse Tech, Pulse Tech, TECH. And these are mil-spec devices. The U.S. military uses them, which is all I need to know. Lead-acid batteries go bad for the following reason. Sulfur builds up on the lead plates. Incrementally, a little bit at a time, cutting down the amount of electricity can be stored in these batteries until the point where they become useless. What the PulseTech device does is send a reverse charge into the battery, knocking the sulfur buildup off the lead plates, basically doubling the life of these batteries. Now, a deep cycle 12-volt battery goes for about how much now retail, Tom?
Well, I don't know. The battery, I don't know, John. I've seen marine-type batteries you can get a pretty nice, pretty good-sized marine battery for around $100 or so. The batteries I use are actually from cell phone transmitters, cell sites, the main base station for cell phone systems.
Right.
That's what they're used for. That's what I use. And I think the list price on those were around $165 each. They're 55 amp hour batteries.
Well, regardless, good quality batteries is a nice little chunk of change. And if you can buy them every 6 or 7 years instead of every 3 years, you're obviously saving money, aren't you?
Yeah, that's right. And those pulsar units are really fantastic. They will extend the life, and many times you can take a used battery. It's all sulfated, maybe won't hold a charge, or it won't take a charge at all. And you can force some current into it, give it a hot shot to get it kind of starting to take some power, and then put one of those units on there. It might take a month, but you can many times revitalize those batteries and bring them back to life.
Well, PulseTech does sell another device, a separate one, that's meant to do just that, take a battery that's at the end of its life and rejuvenate it. And that's a different type of device, and that costs substantially more. It's meant more for garages and place of business, so they can have something they can use there on their premises. But the regular PulseTech device that I've been using now for about 20 years, they're not terribly expensive at all, around $35, $40, something in that range. And they pay for themselves very quickly.
Oh, yeah. I think it's a wise thing to put one of those on the equipment. Now, I don't know if those things generate any noise, John, but when you're operating HF equipment, you want the lowest noise in the area as possible, and just by the design, those things most likely will generate some noise. So maybe perhaps when you're using the batteries on the equipment, you might not want that unit connected, but maybe on standby you could put a switch or something.
Well, a quick disconnect would be easy to rig up. A quick disconnect would not be an issue because your battery is there 24/7, but you're only using it a few hours a week at the most, typically. So that would be easily remedied.
Yeah. Well, that's true, and it's just something to take into consideration. If you are using a pulse unit on the batteries to keep them from sulfating, you notice noise in the radio or clicks and pops, it could be from that unit, so you might want to experiment disconnecting it temporarily and see if those noise problems go away.
Yep. If they did, I would just simply cut one wire and attach a male-female spade connector, and which is a quick way to connect or disconnect any wire, and with relative ease. Which brings up something else, and that would be kits. I've put together, and I'm sure you have kits yourself, kits of tools and kits of parts to work on these radios, right, Tom?
Oh, yeah. John, you can't imagine the tools and the equipment it takes to do some of this. You know, there's little screwdriver units that are used to tune the radios that they have to be non-magnetic, they have to be this or that, non-conductive, they have to be this size, that size. So you have all types of tuning tools, and then, of course, you have different screwdrivers and nut drivers and things like that needed to get in and out of the equipment, get the cases opened and so on. They have tamper-proof screws and just everything you can think of. And then you need to, there's a lot. Just to have the tools take up a lot of room. And
of course, the men I work with on these projects, their kits include surgeon's gloves, so they leave behind no DNA and no fingerprints when they're done.
Well, that's not a bad idea. That's right.
Yeah, well, I travel in some usual circles, to say the least, but most of these, and I like these little plastic storage boxes. Typically, they're about a foot and a half by a foot and a half, maybe 2 inches deep. That have all little dividers that I can put all the different connectors, because there's so many different connectors for radio antennas and power supplies, isn't there?
Oh, yeah, especially the antennas. Most of them use what's called a UHF connector. That's the most popular, and then there's BNC and N-type connectors. You get into the higher frequency ranges, and you'll see a lot of N connectors. And I'll tell you what, when you have to put one of those on a cable, that takes some skill. It's not you don't just hook it on there. You have to practice for a while to do those N connectors.
And this is, we're starting our ham radio club in May here, Tom. I believe it's May. I don't have that bookwork in front of me, but I'll be bringing some of my kits, and I would hope you bring some of your kits also to show people the tools, the boxes full of all the different connectors for butt connectors, spade connectors, and so forth for the different diameter wires, which are color-coded. And it helps just to start out, just getting one big box that has everything in it already when it comes to these connectors, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. And, as far as batteries and power supplies go, when you start dealing with higher power radio equipment, you have a considerable amount of current that's going through those wires. So you need to have the larger cable sizes to carry those currents. That's very important. And then when you crimp these connectors on there, what I always do, John, is after I connect up to a battery or a power supply, I actually test that connection by taking a very sensitive voltmeter, like a millivoltmeter, and any digital handheld multimeter can do this. Put it on the lowest scale and just go right on the positive supply, the positive pin of the power supply, and then on the other side of your crimp, where you just made your crimp, and measure the voltage drop across that connection. If you have, the lower the number, the better. So if you read quite a few, say a few hundred millivolts, you have a bad connection there, and you need to check it out. You want the lowest voltage drop across that connection. Another thing you can do is, after you operated the radio for a while, take one of those infrared-type thermometers that has the little laser pointer and go right on that power connection and check to see if there's any temperature rise, because that power drop, or the voltage drop across there, that's acting like a resistor, and that will actually heat up. And John, on that topic, you can take those infrared temperature probes. I like to go on the power panel once in a while after you're running appliances and maybe your electric stove or your air conditioner or whatever, and just check the circuit breakers. You can go up and down the panel and check those circuit breakers. You can find out if you have a bad breaker that's heating up, that could be a fire hazard. You'll identify it very quickly, because it will be a lot warmer than the ambient room temperature.
Right. And what's that piece of test equipment called again? It's
an infrared thermometer. You can buy them at Home Depot, Lowe's, $50 or less dollars, and it has a laser pointer. You just point that laser. The closer you are, the more accurate it is. You can sometimes measure from 30 feet away. You can point at something, and absolutely. I've looked at power panels 15 feet away. Now it's much more accurate the closer you are, but you get a foot or two from those breakers and just start going up and down the panel. What you do is you measure the side of the power panel and just that's your base point, your baseline, and you find out what that temperature is. Maybe it's 70 degrees Fahrenheit, and then you start looking at the breakers. You can look at the main breaker. It may show a little bit of temperature rise, and you go up and down the bank of breakers, and you'll find the ones that are hot. Yeah.
Hold that thought, Tom. We got a last break. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. All right, we are back, ladies and gentlemen. We're back. J.R. Moore here on Friday the 17th of November. Visiting with Tom Berryhill. We're talking about radio communications. People are listening to us, Tom. They're scratching their heads and wondering what this stuff is we're talking about. We're attempting to make it plain as simple as possible on one hand. On the other, people's wonderment, I hope, encourages them to get active and become part of a ham radio club. Right, Tom? Hello, Tom. Okay. Looks like Tom's not there. Well, okay. Got about 4 or 5 minutes left here in the show, and somehow we lost Tom along the way there. I don't know what happened.
If you can hear me.
I hear you now, Tom. We're
okay.
You're back.
Well, what I was saying is that if somebody would just go online and research ham radio clubs in their city or town or their local area, they'll find a group somewhere close by that they could visit. They'll always publish their meeting dates, and maybe go to the meeting and introduce yourself and tell them that you're interested in learning more, and they'll be more than happy to fill you in on what you need to do. And these groups usually provide the testing to get your license. And I've been told by several newer ham operators, John, that they had to spend about 15 hours of study time to learn the basics to pass that test and get that license and get on the air. So it can be done in a pretty short period of time, and I always encourage entire families to do this. Bring the younger people along, bring the kids along, and they soak it in real fast, and they can learn it quickly, and you put the whole family on the air and set up your own radio network and do whatever you want. It's a lot of fun.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You learn a lot. You have fun. You make new friends. There's social aspects of this, technical aspects of this, learning aspects to it. It's all a win-win situation, isn't it, Tom?
Well, it really is. And it really is, John, an educational thing for the younger people. They can learn so much about electronics. They have the ability to build their own equipment, experiment in real radio settings, not in a laboratory environment, but actually put the equipment on the air, test it out, learn from their mistakes, retune it, increase the capabilities of the equipment. There's really no restrictions on what you can do as far as learning more about this. And I've always used the ham radio equipment as almost a test bed for my ideas on antennas and power amplifiers and just radio equipment in general. We've always used the ham radio bands to try out these new ideas and have built some pretty sophisticated systems in the past and some even recently. So it's a great test bed for an educational setting to try out ideas and just learn as you go on a do-it-yourself type of environment. And the young people really can learn so much from getting involved in this technology.
All right. Tom, thank you, sir. I appreciate it. We'll have you back next week.
Thank you, John.
Okay, we got a top of the hour break. We'll be back with Dr. Phil Myers. Stay tuned. We're back, ladies and gentlemen. J.R. Moore here, our second hour on Friday, the 17th of November. In proper tip of the day, I want to encourage all of you to get your car kits together. If you live in the part of the country where they have gates on the interstate highway, well, you know what I'm talking about. Serious winter that can be life-threatening. Farther south, it's more of an inconvenience than a life-threatening situation, although that can happen also. So get your car kit together, your winter car kit. Be sure you have a way to keep warm, a way to communicate, a way to signal people, and so forth. It's going to be different things for different people depending on where you live, and that's your prepper tip of the day. Fridays, we have Dr. Phil Myers with us, second hour, most Fridays. If he calls in, we'll have him with us, and we began a new matter last Friday. That's the health tip of the week. And here's your health tip of the week. That's to encourage people to acquire and use cast iron cookware. Now, you may say, John, well, I want that heavy old-fashioned stuff. Well, here's why. Because when you cook food in cast iron cookware, some of the iron gets into the food, which is a good thing. It's a healthy thing to have the iron get into the food and consume it so you can replenish and restore the iron in your body. It looks like Dr. Myers has not called in. Sometimes he runs a little bit late due to traffic situations and so forth. So we will have open lines here at Republic Broadcasting at 1-800-313-9443. And, of course, people can't call in because they can't hear me this morning. Everybody's listening on the archives. But that's okay. No sweat, GI. That's okay. At my website, at thelibertyman.com, at the top, very top, we have a banner that says Is La Palma about to fall into the sea? La Palma is over there in the Canary Islands. It's a Spanish territory. I recall when I was a boy in junior high school that neighbor boy down the street, this would have been about 1962. They were going on a family vacation to Canary Islands. It was right at the beginning of Boeing 707 jetliners making international air travel a lot handier, shall we say, and a lot quicker than the DC-3s they'd had up until then, and other propeller-driven aircraft that are considerably slower. So, the Canary Islands, just off the west coast of Africa. We know, because the evidence is very clear, that in the past there's been Atlantic Ocean causing a tidal wave that moves right at the speed of sound across the Atlantic Ocean, wiping out the east coast of North America, from the tip of Florida to the top of Canada, going into the Gulf of Mexico, causing problems there, causing problems with Greenland and Iceland, the British Isles, coast of France and Portugal, and so forth. This happened in the past, and it can happen in the future. That's why my friend Professor McCanny wrote this warning, and let's just click on here and see what Professor McCanny has to say. This is dated October 13th this year, and it's something you need to be aware of. Well, it looks like we do have my friend, my chiropractor, my physician, Dr. Phil Myers, who is a chiropractic physician living and working in St. Louis, Missouri, my hometown. And we're going to talk about health-related matters. If you want to get started with Dr. Myers, it doesn't matter where you live. You can do a private, no-charge telephone conversation with Dr. Myers. Just call his office and have that set up that consultation at 314-878-6868. Dr. Myers already gave the health tip of the week. Would you like to hear it?
I would love to hear it.
Okay. I'm encouraging people to acquire and use cast iron cookware for the following reason. When you cook food in cast iron cookware, it puts iron into the food that helps replenish the iron that your body requires to be healthy. Pretty simple, pretty straightforward, and the cast iron cookware properly maintained will last for generations. And that's
lasts forever.
Yes, that's your health tip of the week. Simple things that people can do and incorporate in their lives with not a whole lot of expense, Doctor. And that's what the health tip of the week's all about, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. And when one thing when you're cooking with those types of things, and also just cooking in general, is remember, cooking is a good thing to do, but at the same time, overcooking your food can create a lot of mineral loss, nutritional loss of the food. So be careful in how much you're cooking your food, right, so you don't lose a lot of the nutritional properties of that, especially when you're spending an arm and a leg on really awesome organic and foods and stuff like that. Absolutely.
Well, Doctor, we're into the late fall here. It'll be the first day of winter in about 4 weeks. And we've had mild winters for a number of years here in eastern Missouri, south central Missouri. But people's health issues do change with the seasons, don't they, sir?
Yeah, especially when it comes to the higher mold counts. We don't think of mold so much during winter, but this is where that mold stagnicity can really come into play for a lot of people. So making sure that you're keeping up with certain nutritional needs with the mold. For example, one of the things that I utilize with myself and with my clients is we have a product called Restore and Colloidal Silver. Restore is a really amazing product that literally restores all of your body's ecosystem nutritional properties. Gives your system the entire immune-boosting flora that it can utilize within the gut. But one thing for this type of season, we utilize it as a nose spray as well, and do a couple pumps up into your nostril cavity, which then does the same thing for the ecosystem in that area, especially for people that really have a dysbiotic gut or imbalance in their ecosystem. The good that ecosystem really doesn't get up into the sinal cavities as well, especially because you have all those microbleeds up there. The bacteria and fungus and mold has kind of built its home and sometimes lays dormant until the optimal season shows up. So utilizing the Restore Nose Spray in there recultures that area. And then we also follow it up with also colloidal silver. Now, not all colloidal silver is the same as a lot of your listeners are aware of.
Right.
Not just in terms of parts per million or parts per billion, but also the size of the particles of silver that have been colloidal into the solution. I recommend if people that do utilize colloidal silver as a nose spray, utilize Artesian 23. 23. It's very, very, very small nano particled colloidal silver and extremely safe.
Is that a brand? Is that a brand?
Yeah, it's a brand. All these brands you can get on my nutritional website, the DSS Orders website. But it's Artesian 23, extremely small nanoparticles that when utilized, for example, in nose sprays and even for the gut itself, it gets into the smaller cellular structures, whereas most people's colloidal silvers have very large particles. And even though the parts per billion or million are a good, adequate number, it won't be as effective because of the size of the particles.
Right. I have an observation to make here, Doctor, that I don't believe you and I have talked about that I can recall. An observation of the way you practice as opposed to allopathic medical doctors. Typically, an allopathic medical doctor, if they diagnose a person has high blood pressure, for example, they will prescribe a chemical product, a drug, that will force the blood pressure to go down. And typically that person will consume that product until the day they die, with maybe minor changes in dosage level or maybe a different type of blood pressure medication. And I think that's a fairly accurate statement, isn't it, sir?
Oh, it's extremely accurate.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Now that's allopathic medical doctors, which most people visit with. Now, the way Dr. Myers' work is, he does his diagnosis, and then he'll figure out what needs to be corrected. And I'm talking about myself personally. And Dr. Myers will prescribe me to take a nutritional supplement of some kind. Let's say Restore. And then once my body has achieved the stated goal of getting back in balance for that particular matter, then I discontinue taking that product and move on to the next issue, don't I, Doctor?
Absolutely. The whole process is attuning your system to its optimal vitalistic possibility. And so at whatever stage you are working at, there's a level above that one is capable of getting to. Now, sometimes it's a supplement, sometimes it's a mental exercise, sometimes it's a physical exercise, sometimes it's a state of lifestyle of stress relief. All of those are good, but not all of those are exactly what you need.
Right.
So we find out what your body is wanting to do to reach that stage of higher optimal health. And then once it's there, you don't need to do the process. For example, Restore for me, I barely ever use it anymore because of the way my system is. But for example, I may do I'm utilizing the Restore Nose Spray because, for example, my system over the years was always inundated with that bacterial fungal mold. That was just how my system had grown up. This last year was one of the first years that I barely had any symptomatologic problems associated with that, and I was utilizing a high protocol the year before that. This year, I'm barely noticing anything happening within my system, and I'm occasionally just utilizing the nose spray just here and there just to keep the system helping and support it along. And that's what you'll notice about yourself as you, as an individual, start noticing and becoming self-aware of how your body works. That's one of the biggest observations that I get noticed from my work versus the traditional works that people are used to, is that we're always working on helping you develop your optimal state of health.
Right.
And moving you along that route.
Yeah. Now, Doctor, you've got a very good job just now of describing what happens when a client comes in and you do your diagnosis and procedures and protocols. Now, I'm going to describe it. Tell me at what point I'm wrong. A medical doctor, allopathic medical doctor, if he has 100 patients come in the door and he correctly diagnoses 100 people with high blood pressure, most likely all 100 are going to go walk out the door with a prescription product, a drug, that will force the blood pressure to go down regardless of the cause. There could be multiple causes for high blood pressure, but they all walk out the door with the same drug product that forces the blood pressure to go down. Would that be a fairly accurate statement, Doctor?
Especially with the old-timers? Absolutely. Some of the newer generation that are hearing and seeing the differences between what they were taught, whereas there's no energy into the system, spirit doesn't live in the system, and we're just a bunch of chemicals in a skin bag.
Right.
A lot of the newer generations are awakening to that, wow, there's something differently. Now, they're limiting it to the low-hanging fruits of, like, pain management and, the research shows that meditation can help blood pressure. You should meditate. And
right.
Then if you can't meditate well enough, then, yes, we'll give you that medication then. But why don't you try meditation? Because I heard that's pretty good. And so some of them are waking up to the process. But the thing that none of them do is none of them know how to work with or attune the spiritual, physical, mental, emotional, biochemical body through hand work and actually working with the body. They actually touch you. Besides just doing like a little physical exam of still being in their diagnostic brain, none of them really know how to touch a human body and help that human body become a higher in its vibrational state and its potential.
Right.
That's one thing that is never done. Even with like in the DOs. Out there, they're getting lost in that allopathic model, even though it's funny. It's like an old standing kind of joke that when people in my field do some really cool move, and a person there, and they say like, "Whoa, where'd you learn that?" "Oh, some old school osteopathic showed me." And it's the real truth. The real amazing healing techniques came from that osteopathic, vitalistic system way back in the day.
Yeah, and that's no longer taught, I assume, is it?
Absolutely not.
It's a shame.
No, he's not.
Here's our break. We have a break. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. J.R. Moore here. It's taken 3 years before I could offer the inter-shelter domes for sale. During those 3 years, several different governments and militaries were taking all their production. The inter-shelter dome homes may be just what you've been looking for to provide affordable, energy-efficient, permanent, and attractive housing. These dome homes are prefabricated units that can be assembled in a few hours by 2 men with a ladder and simple hand tools. Check out the photos of these dome homes built in the Arctic, on tropical beaches, in suburban areas, and in forests. All the details, many photographs, and the pricing of the dome homes are listed on the left-hand side of my homepage at thelibertyman.com. I think you'll find these homes are not only attractive, but they're energy efficient, and a bonus. You can disassemble them and reassemble them as many times as you feel you need to. Pretty great, huh? Something that's very, very unique. Check them out at my website at thelibertyman.com. All right, we are back, ladies and gentlemen. We're back. J.R. Moore here on Friday the 17th of November, visiting with Dr. Phil Myers. You also can gain access to this expertise, the integration of mind, body, and spirit. All you need to do is call his office, set up that first private no-charge consultation at 314-878-6868. Doctor, something we've talked about previously, but it's been a while, is these allopathic medical students in medical schools. They pretty quickly, within the first year of their, I'm sure, first few months, they start hearing about the placebo effect. And if I was in that school and I was told that people can have a very real illness, disease, and cure themselves is what's going on, I would start asking questions about how can people really have a real bona fide disease and really cure themselves on their own, basically. And the placebo, of course, being a sugar pill, as they're typically called, does nothing except kick in the person's internal innate ability to cure themselves. And they hear this, they see it, they're aware of it, and they just drop it off to the side like it never happened, don't they, Doctor?
You stated it perfectly, because that information is about a nanosecond of information surrounded by the midterm exams, the final exams, and the parade of information about diagnosis, refer out. Diagnosis, here's the pill. Diagnosis, here's the surgery. Diagnosis in the system continues. And that is what is taught. I mean, that's even the same thing taught in DO schools and DC schools, but at a very higher degree in allopathic schools, is the main, because there's always two things that I always tell people that your physicians are taught. And one is to become an amazing diagnostician. That is first and foremost the primary concern of all institutions, is to get the students to come out knowing how to look at a human body, evaluate symptoms, and diagnose a problem. And that is exactly what everyone is taught. Then in, for example, allopathic medicine, the focuses then are always on drugs and or surgery. That is their tools of treatment and protocol care. And if they do touch a human body, it's only to touch to examine and diagnose. There's really no touch in terms of treatment.
Right.
At all, taught inside the structure of the institution itself. Now, there might be some elective courses on, like acupuncture, for example. There's a lot of MDs that are starting to wake up to acupuncture, but even a lot of them, at least in the mainstream, are only focusing on pain, and that's pretty much what and a little bit of stress relief. But that's all they limit it down to. Then
right.
in our
well,
past,
it's an opening.
sorry,
it's an opening.
It's an opening. It's a very good opening. That low hanging fruit,
right,
is what we call it. It's definitely an opening.
Your statements, Doctor, bring to mind something we don't talk about much when we talk about the energy cleaner, but the healing ability of the energy cleaner is dramatically amplified when a friend or a relative touches the affected area that needs to be healed, with the energy clearing signal going into that person as well. Here's an analogy that I think may be appropriate. I'm a firearms instructor, and if I have a student that hits one shot dead center, and then the others are kind of scattered around, and I tell my student, if you can do it one time, you can do it every time. So if we got 100 people and 30 of them cure themselves with a placebo, that tells me that 100 people could do it if they knew how to.
Absolutely.
Here's our break. Stay tuned. We can be right
back. You are tuned in to the Republic Broadcasting Network. Visit our website by going to republicbroadcasting.org.
Ladies and gentlemen, J.R. Moore here. We're continuing our energy cleaner promotion, which began August of 2016. In this promotion, you get to buy an energy cleaner, $70 off retail, and a mattress pad, 10% off retail. $200 of the purchase price of the energy cleaner goes to Republic Broadcasting. This is a great way to help get energy cleaners out to people who need them and have some financial issues to deal with. And, of course, a great way to support Republic Broadcasting. Here's what you do. Send in a postcard. My address is John Moore, P.O. Box 201, Davidsville, Missouri. We pick a postcard every 2 weeks. If your postcard is drawn, you get the chance to buy the energy cleaner, $70 off retail, and 10% off the mattress pads. Put your name and your address, your telephone number, and your email address on the postcard, and we wish you the best of luck. Thank you. All right, we are back, ladies and gentlemen. We're back. J.R. Moore here on Friday, the 17th of November. My website is thelibertyman.com. That's thelibertyman.com. Going along with our topic today, there's a free download at my website, an excellent book that can help you achieve your goals. They might be health-related, personal relationship-related, business-related, doesn't matter. The title of the book is The Power of Your Subconscious Mind by Dr. Joseph Murphy. My copy is well read, has tabs and highlights, and yours will also. Free download at my website. You really need that book. Also, my website, of course, are energy cleaners. It's a healing device. No, it's not the silver bullet. It's something you use in addition to getting help from somebody like Dr. Myers, nutritional changes to your diet, attitude changes. All these things work together to have the fun, full, healthy life that we all want to have. An energy cleaner can and should be part of it. I use mine every night, and you can also. Only $285, shipping included to American zip codes. Keep in mind, I offer a 30-day money-back guarantee. That's from me to you personally. I stand behind these machines. I do take PayPal, MasterCard, Visa. Checks can be sent to my address at thelibertyman.com. Be sure and check out the factory-made fitted mattress pads. It's a great combination to go with the energy cleaner. I have a toll-free hour line 24 hours a day. Here it is, 800-592-9543. I say again, 800-592-9543. Taking your questions, calls, and comments here at Republic Broadcasting. The call number is 800-313-9443. And yes, we are visiting with Dr. Myers, as we do most Fridays, second hour. And there's an easy way to get started with Dr. Myers. Real easy. You just call his office, set up that first private no-charge consultation. That telephone number is 314-878-6868. Doctor, the topic of healthcare is in the national news pretty much every day, without exception. What's not in the national news is a discussion of, quote unquote, what is healthcare? I never see that. Do you, Doctor?
Oh, absolutely not. And unfortunately, I really don't think we're going to.
No, we're not. Not at that level. Not at the national news level. Because
Not
that's
even
verboten. No, we can't. We're not allowed to have a national discussion of what is health care. I recall the Queen Mother, the mother of Queen Elizabeth. She died a few years ago, I think at 103, 105, whatever it was. She never set foot in the office of a allopathic medical doctor. All her health-related matters was all by naturopaths. And we're talking some of the wealthiest people on the planet here, aren't we, Doctor?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You think they may know something? You think they may know something?
Oh, John, you're opening up a wormhole right there. That's a very large soapbox that I stand on with that one.
Oh yeah. Well, when the wealthiest people on the planet do not interact with allopathic medical doctors, that tells me a lot.
Oh yeah, it's uncanny. I put a Facebook little thing on my Facebook page on ask your doctor if getting prescription information about about what drugs you need is a good thing to get from a TV set. And
right.
I mean, and that's pretty much, it's a brainwashing of us, the barefoot peasants, that they see as basically cattle and as a means to their empire to just put more money into their pockets. And it's just, and the way to do that the most is they said, oh wow, let's keep them sick.
Right.
And through all the pollution in the air, all the pollution in the water, the temperament of our food source in every which way beyond the sun, they're working on affecting our entire ecosystem, our genetic code, the health status of all of the systems of our body and of our mind. And if they can just keep us watching if they can just keep us watching the ball games and keep watching the mundane TV shows with the onslaught of bogus information and commercials
right.
that just tell you to do this, do that, or the other with some catchy catch song or phrase. And the thing is, even with these quote-unquote pharmaceutical commercials, where they have all the disclaimers, it's hysterical. You'll even hear this it's for example, let's say infertility or something. Like if you're wanting to get pregnant or if you're thinking about getting pregnant, don't take this, but take this for wanting to get pregnant.
Right.
It's just like, and it's the funniest thing. I mean, they're literally telling you in your face, this is going to kill you and not help you at all, but here, take it. This will totally help you with your scenario, and people buy into it.
Right. Well, they know how to pull at people's emotional heartstrings. I don't have TV, but I do have access to radio, and I have a radio commercial about encourage people to get flu shots, and the heartstring tug was get the flu shots to help keep your grandchildren from getting the flu from you. So they're using that appeal, that emotional appeal.
Mm-hmm. It's all fear-based.
They're very clever.
It's a fear-based system is what it is. And if you even look at the way diagnosis is expressed in what we call your review of findings. It's what all physicians learn is they say, okay, they teach us, this is what's going to happen. The person's going to walk into their office, they're broken, there's going to be something wrong with them. It's your job to find out what that thing is, diagnose it, and then tell them unless they follow your protocol, they will never be quote-unquote fixed. But in reality, you can't fix it. You can only suppress the symptoms to a degree until their body breaks down and shuts down. Because they know that the whole process of our environment, our food, our water, our thinking, our exercise is all geared towards keeping the system down, suppressed, and sick. And it's your job as physicians to manage that.
Right.
And make sure that we get...
That's the term they use, patient management.
Patient management. That is the protocol. And when people come into my office and I do the review of findings, and first things first, before I even go over, I'm like, I want to explain something. You're not broken. I don't care if you're cancer-ridden, have a tumor in your frontal cortex that's completely pressing on something. There's nothing wrong with you. There's nothing broken. What we're doing is we're going to find out how to help your system become more balanced or coherent or in a higher state of vitality than what it's currently at to allow all your natural systems that are indigenous to your entire being vibrate at their highest and greatest potential.
Right.
And my job is then to teach you and help you accomplish that.
Right.
And they're like, okay, wow, that's very different, extremely different.
Doctor, I have a friend. She's a nurse practitioner. Her and her husband are friends of mine, and she's a very bright woman, and she's studying independently. You know, they're basically a nurse practitioner is basically the same as a medical doctor these days in the clinic she works in. She says, John, I'm not allowed to do what I know would work to get these people healthy. If I do, I will lose my license.
Yeah.
And what a trick bag to be put in. And, you know, people go into these career fields thinking that they're going to be helping people and healing people, only to find out later, if they continue their studies independent of what they learned in school, only to find out that what they learned was a bunch of horse hockey. And and they're now, and
that'd be an interesting visual. Horses playing hockey.
Yeah, exactly. and so they have a student debt. They have a career, they have a pension to look forward to, and a paycheck that keeps their family going, all of which would be at risk if they was to do what they know would work and go outside the parameters of what they're allowed to do. What a devastating trick bag that is to be put in.
Oh, absolutely. And it's really funny. You start seeing the different documentaries out there and different. We're kind of talking more about the medical side, the allopathic side and you have to understand it's the institutional system. It's like they've basically been institutionalized.
Right.
But if you look at the human being going into the institution, all of them are awesome. They're just like you and me. They have a heart, they have a soul, they have a spirit. They're spiritual beings having a human experience, and it's just the same reason that I speak English is because I was born here in Ohio, speaking English with an English-speaking family. And so I got institutionalized in that language. I got institutionalized in the mannerisms of the family mottos that I grew up with and all this and that and the other. And when you go into these higher educational institutions, they're just continually reinforcing the unhumanistic side of your truest and highest potential, and
with an absolute prohibition upon the threat of being expelled if you deviate from that.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I have friends of mine that are currently have gone to DC school and are currently going into the medical schools to, quote unquote, just get the piece of paper so that they can work with their clients. For example, like I chose not to do this, but for we take care of a lot of people, and they come here with all these medications. Well, what I legally, because of my licensure, I am not allowed to tell you what you can and cannot do with your medication, or that this medication, you should be taking this or should not be taking this. I legally cannot do that. So what I do in the work that I do is I show you what is it that your medications are doing to you. And then I work on helping. I say, okay, when your system gets to a vitalistic state, it's going to tell you what you should or should not be doing. Then it's up to you as a sovereign state to make free will choice of what you're going to do with that. And I do recommend going to your physician and telling them what you're going to do, and then it's back in that court.
Right.
And in that way, you're completely following legality. And you have to do that game. I've just learned to play it very, very well.
Right. Well, you have no choice, Doctor. You've been given no choice, and you do play it very well. It's never been an issue with me because how old were you in 1985, Doctor?
About 85, 8.
Okay. That's the last time I had a prescription pharmaceutical product. So it's never been an issue between you and I, obviously. And
obviously.
And when I have a mandatory physical because of insurance, life insurance, I'm talking to some doctor your age who was 8 years old the last time, and they can't believe it. They said, this guy must be lying. This can't be true. Mm-hmm. And they do all their testing and protocols and find out, oh, John Moore is telling the truth. But my health used to be the norm 100 years ago, didn't it, Doctor?
Oh, yeah. The amount of medications that people are on, and even the simpler medications, let's not even talk about the biologics, which is basically a chemo drug that they're marketing as a biologic. Oh, that sounds more humane. Oh, it's working with my biology. It's a biologic. It's a higher biological pharmaceutical that's going to help me even more. No, they're pumping you with a chemo form of a pill.
Oh boy.
That's what a biologic is. So all these rheumatoid arthritis, and here let me share with you guys with something that you guys don't, no one sees unless you've been in the institution. Is rheumatology is a study of basically the inflammatory nature of the human condition. And what that means is it's the study of every cell, every tissue, every organ, and especially the bony system of the body, and how it is affected by inflammation. Now, where that inflammation came from, they don't talk about. They just talk about the effects of inflammation on these structures.
Right.
That book is over 1,000 pages and more terminology and diagnostic diagnosis names that you could fill the Pacific Ocean with the amount of diagnostic information that's in this book. And that is just on the inflammatory effect on osseous or bony joint structures. And it is ungodly on how much. And so what we do know is we know that the body is going to be subject to inflammatory processes. Now, again, we're not going to tell you where these inflammatory processes are coming from, because that's not what our job is to do. We're just here to manage this inflammatory process, catch it, and make sure that the person lives longer with that inflammatory process, utilizing drugs and surgeries to help them with this, that, or the other. But we're never going to actually address the inflammatory process itself, how it got there, why it's there, and why the body will not revert back to its indigenous process of anti-inflammatory makeup.
Amazing. Doctor, we got our last break. Stay tuned, everybody. We'll be right back. All right, we are back, ladies and gentlemen. We're back. J.R. Moore here on Friday, the 17th of November. If you want to break away, escape the allopathic medicine paradigm, I would suggest you consider doing that. A great way to escape is to make that first phone call for that first private, no-charge consultation with Dr. Myers. Call his office, set up that consultation. Here's that telephone number, 314-878-6868. Doctor, prior to World War I, about 1912, we had some issues as a nation with health. Most of them were hygiene related, lack of hot water and soap for much of our population, flush toilets. But that was corrected by the end of World War II for the most part. But in the meantime, beginning around 1912 is when the shift from homeopathic teaching hospitals became allopathic teaching hospitals for these medical doctors. And, for example, lung cancer was so rare in 1900 that if there was one in a teaching hospital, they would make sure every student saw that patient with lung cancer. They were told, you may practice 40 years and never see somebody with lung cancer. It's so rare that you need to get by and see this patient so you know what this looks like. Things have changed dramatically, haven't they, Doctor?
Oh, they've changed so much. And we say that these are lifestyle diseases that we are all dealing with. Bacterial, fungal, mold. For example, we kind of get into that inflammatory thing. One of the biggest processes is this bacterial, fungal, mold virus thing. And through all the pollutants that are in the air, your natural defense system is being inundated so much it utilizes more of its quote-unquote inflammatory immune process. It just does. And because of all the GMO and all the different types of excitotoxins that we're eating, when your body gets too much of that over a period of time, your body is going to naturally use the inflammatory immune system, which is more allergenic, gives you more allergies, increases your susceptibility to autoimmune diseases, every autoimmune disease under the sun, specifically all those inflammatory skeletal issues, are mostly 9 times out of 10 that autoimmune response. And so they just do not and will not teach the students of the institutions how to actually reverse the lifestyle that their patients are dealing with. And it's simple. I mean, we tell you guys on the phone, on the radio show all the time, just don't put it in your mouth.
Exactly. Doctor, we're going to have to wrap it up at that point.
It's the easiest thing.
I know. I want to thank you for being with us as always. I think we got some good information out here today that's going to help a lot of people. And I look forward to having you back next Friday, sir. I think we'll have a show the day after Thanksgiving. I'm not positive, but I'm pretty sure we will. Thank you, Doctor.
All right. Well, let me know.
Okay. That's it for the day. It's it for the week. Get your medical supplies, your energy, clean your essential oils now while you can, your firearms and ammunition. Never, ever give up your guns. Please do have a fun, safe, productive day and weekend. And God bless America.